This past weekend, I spent some time attempting to tie up some loose ends in my video game backlog. I actually finished up some games that I was just a few hours from finishing. I started the DLC, the first DLC for The Witcher 3, and I decided I was going to pick one game in my library that I hadn't started playing at all and dive in. And that game ended up being Nioh. So believe it or not, I have not played Nioh at all, despite having owned it since it originally released on PC, which is now at this point well over a year. I thought it was like 6 months ago, and I looked at the release date when I started doing this video, and I was like, 2017, February. Oh, smokes. It's been that long. It has actually been that long. There was a good reason I didn't start Nioh at all, though. It was just, it released in a period of time where I had way too many other games I was playing for the channel. I was too busy with stuff for the channel, and I knew it was one of those games, much like a Souls game or Bloodborne or, you know, just one of those big open world games that I wasn't going to have time to truly commit to. So that meant that even if I could put 10 hours into it, I was going to have to walk away for a long period of time and then come back to it and feel kind of confused and lost as to what I was doing with my character. And I don't like doing that. It makes it harder to come back to those games. In a lot of cases, I'd rather just not start it at all, maybe watch some other people play it every now and then, live vicariously through some streamers playing it, and then finally come back to it when I know I actually have like a few months where I can sit down and play it on the weekends. And so I've decided to make Nioh, in essence, one of few summer games I'm going to be playing, because I do plan on taking a vacation coming up probably in the next couple of months, maybe for like a week, probably spend some time with Michelle, and then also spend a bunch of time playing games. So I was like, oh, let's throw Nioh into that mix. It's a game I really wanted to start playing. You know, I fell in love with Dark Souls with DS1. I loved Bloodborne. I'm a huge fan of Souls-like experiences, and I love to give them a go, and I've heard nothing but really positive things about Nioh, so I was really excited to finally play it for myself and see how I felt about it. Watching it is one thing. Hearing people talk about it is one thing. Playing it sometimes can be something entirely different, and that's been my experience with Nioh. I mean, everything people said about it, you know, all the ways people spoke positively about it was, you know, was good. I mean, I like the game. I'm not saying that, like, people have said good things and I don't like it, but there's just ways in which, you know, you can get a feel for a game, ways in which a game is going to come across to you on an emotional level that it's just going to differ from everyone else. And that's kind of how I feel about Nioh. I guess we should start, though, with the fact that Nioh is, as we've already mentioned, a Souls-like experience, right? That's where people are drawing constant comparisons. A lot of the reviews you see out there for Nioh are like, it comes across as a generic action RPG trying to mimic Dark Souls, but it's actually really special. And I would agree with that. On its surface, Nioh does look kind of generic, but the more you play it, in fact, within the first couple hours, I put about 3 hours into the game now, I think, it comes into its own. You know, it has its own atmosphere. It has its own vibes, its own theme. It's going for that ninja type thing. In fact, Nioh reminds me a lot of old school Tenchu. It really does. Like, the difficulty is there. It's a completely different beast compared to Tenchu, but that aesthetic, right? That Japanese aesthetic, that idea of being a ninja is very much there. The thing I like about Nioh is that you can kind of decide if you want to be like a lightweight ninja, you want to be more kind of middle ground, you want to be a samurai with heavy armor, and of course you've got the slew of different weapons you can equip. It definitely does a lot of things that makes it its own. I think in a lot of ways it stands out as a very special Souls-like more than Lords of the Fallen was able to for me. Like, I didn't like Lords of the Fallen because it just never felt like it was its own thing. It is its own thing. It has its own theme, its own atmosphere, its own art style, but it never felt like special to me. It never pulled me in, I guess, right? I know a lot of people love that game, and as far as Souls-likes goes, but it just didn't do it for me, right? It didn't have those hints, those extra bits of flavor that were like, hey, we might be a Souls-like, but this is Lords of the Fallen. It didn't do that for me. Nioh, though, was like, hey, yeah, I know we got a lot of similarities to that Dark Souls, that Bloodborne game, but listen, this is Nioh, and it's different, and it definitely feels that way. I will say, though, the one area in which Nioh feels a lot like a good Souls game is its replayability. So that sense of I can fail 100 times over, but I still want to keep playing this game. That is the essence of what got me hooked on Dark Souls in the first place. When I played DS1, it was my first Souls game. I didn't play Demon Souls. That was the first game I played when it released. I dove into it, and I got my ass handed to me about 1,000 times over. I spent the first 2 months playing that game in the first 2 areas of the world. I refused to look at guides. I wanted to just go it alone, right? I mean, it felt like a classic game to me, and I wanted to treat it as such. I wanted to treat it like my, you know, young experiences growing up playing Earthbound and Metroid and in Mario and Castlevania and Battletoads. I just wanted to get destroyed, and I wanted to enjoy the game in that manner, and I did. And I got to learn a lot on my own, and, you know, after 3 months went by, I was finally understanding the mechanics, and I went from needing the pyromancer to beat the first ogre fight, the first troll fight on the bridge, to being able to do it with no shield. You know, like, I really got to see myself grow as a player, and that's not something you get to experience a lot in single player games anymore, you know. So that was like that birth of something special. Nioh totally has that. Like, it's not going to take me as long as it took me to learn Dark Souls with Nioh, because I've just played games like this at this point. But I can see that satisfaction that comes behind just killing the same enemies over and over and over again in Nioh. And you have such a wide breadth of weapons available pretty much right from the get-go in Nioh that I think it expands that early game replayability, where you can spend a lot of time focusing on the different weapon types and running combinations of the two weapon types, and that's a whole thing that you're going to have to learn within itself. We do have a much larger focus on ranged weapons here. It feels a little bit more like Bloodborne in a sense, but the weapons are actually range capable here, where Bloodborne's a little bit more close quarters, offhand type stuff. So, you know, it feels like its own special game, and I really like the aesthetic, and I really like the theme, and I like that it has that great sense of replayability at its core. I think that is like a trademark of a great Souls-like, is that you can get your ass handed to you a million times over, and there's a brief window where you feel genuinely frustrated, where you want to put the controller down and you want to walk away, but just as you're about to, you realize how much you actually enjoy the combat. You realize how much you actually enjoy the combat and the gameplay. You pick the controller up and you go for another run. So it's like you're either like wanting to play a little bit more, just another hour, or you're on that brink of quitting, and then you're back into just another hour, you know. And that's the great thing about these types of games. There's one thing though that I've noticed, and I typically wouldn't talk about a game or have as much to say about a game this early on. Like, I've only played Nioh for, I don't know, it's been like 3 hours at most, but I think that's kind of the sign of a great game for me, is when I have so much to say within the first hour. And it was like, from the moment I really got into combat in Nioh, it was like, wow, there's just so much to say about the vibe of this game, the mood, the sort of the way the game presents itself to you as the player. And that's something special. So that's why I'm talking about it right now. I'd like to come back at a later date and talk a lot more once I've sunk some serious time into it. But it's got really good first impressions. You know, it reminds me of God of War, which is the game that I played most recently that I had a lot to say about in like the first 30 minutes. That's totally Nioh for me. So there's one thing that Nioh has done for me as an individual that feels really special. When you play Dark Souls, when you play Bloodborne, those games feel very oppressive. Like, everything you do in those games, even as you get more powerful as a player and in terms of skill and equipment level and gear and stuff like that, you just always feel like you're constantly on the brink of just being annihilated. Every enemy you encounter just feels like, man, this is my end. This is it. I'm going to die right here. Now, Nioh is actually that. It's the same thing, right? The enemies can kill you within a moment's notice, but there's a certain level of confidence that Nioh gives you as a player by design, I feel, that makes it easier for you to just be overconfident. You know, for you to get out there and feel like, I got this, and then get your ass absolutely handed to you by a really small, simple enemy type. And I think I've tied it back, at least for me on a personal level, to the game's mobility. You know, especially wearing light or medium armor, you are really fast in Nioh. Your ability to dodge enemies is pretty impressive by comparison to other games. It feels a lot more like Bloodborne in that sense, where you're really mobile and you can really dash around. And that's a very empowering mechanic. Coincidentally, it's a mechanic that Team Ninja's known for with their work on Ninja Gaiden. Like, Ninja Gaiden is also a game that will absolutely have your ass handed to you on a silver platter, just time and time again. Just place your order, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be out of the kitchen in just a mere moment, right? That's Ninja Gaiden. But the game empowered you through its movement system. It lets you feel powerful, so it could shut you down, so it could punish you for any oversteps you made in confidence. Any moment where you let your ego get a bit too large and you felt like, I got this, boom, it would slap you in the face and then cut you in half, right? And Nioh totally does that. So that's something that has created an extra layer of difficulty in the game that I didn't expect. An extra layer of difficulty that doesn't exist in Bloodborne, even with its movement system, or in Dark Souls for me. It's just this sense of confidence through that mobility system. And maybe it's just because I've always connected with games that let you go fast. I like mobility-focused games. But that's really cool. Like, that's a piece of Nioh that I did not expect, having seen the game 1,000 times over. I saw how fast you can move. I never once thought that that would be like a layer of the game that let me feel overconfident. And that really ties into like the stamina system, the fact that you can see enemy stamina bars, which is really cool. And there's just a whole lot of layers of nuance in Nioh that make me smile as well. It is a game that rewards exploration, right? Just like a good Souls game. There's a lot of that in the game. I really like the way they handle the sort of revenants, so being able to see these graves either from AI or from other players that you can then summon and fight for gear. Like, there's so many extra layers of difficulty that are optional in Nioh. Like, do you want to fight like the 20 revenants in this village from other players? This one's probably way too high level for you. This one's probably your level. This one's way lower level. What's the gear like? Do you even want to risk that right now? Do you want to just go to the boss fight? Do you want to just continue to explore? You know, there's like constant opportunity to present yourself with additional opportunities to die. I like that. I like Nioh. This is a good game. I'm looking forward to playing a lot more of it. I've made my way to the first substantial boss in the game, fighting like this crazy bad guy Dark Realm troll dude with these 2 giant boulders on his hands, and I've got 2 deaths on him so far. We'll see if I can't kill him before the Monday is over. If you guys have played Nioh, I'd love to know what you thought of it, you know, whether you enjoyed it. If you want to draw some comparisons between Nioh and like other Souls games, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, maybe even other Souls like Lords of the Fallen, I really like to hear that sort of thing, because I think when we talk about games within this now ever-growing subgenre, and I hope it just keeps getting bigger. Honestly, I'd love to see this grow. You know, we've got Shadows Die Twice coming out, which looks to be going in an entirely different direction as well. I like that, man. This is an area of gaming I want to see get bigger, especially if it's getting filled with really great products like Nioh. Let's just talk about that. I want to hear your feelings, your thoughts on that. Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today on what is hopefully a glorious Monday for you, and I'll see you in the next one.